Hey, folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Southwest Virginia fishing report with Matt Reilly. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
As always, just trying to stay out of trouble. And, we were talking before we started recording, and I think maybe in your neck of the woods, at least from a fishing perspective, things have started to kind of normalize post-hurricane.
Oh yeah. We've been musky fishing on the new for a couple of weeks now. The kind of dirty water coming out of Crater Lake is now in the past. Like 97% of the boat ramps and access points on the system are back in usable shape. Especially, if you've got a raft or something, you could not necessarily have to back all the way to the river. So yeah, we're kind of in the swing of things now. It's been nice.
Yeah, and you were telling me that below Crater Lake that you actually got a little bit of stain in the water, so it's actually making things a little bit more productive than normal.
Yeah, it's slowly becoming less and less stain, but it's not the gin clarity that we would normally have with the amount of rainfall we've had in the last month and low water this time of year. So that has been nice to have that little bit of fail condition in the water. There's lots of real clear water in the system too. Just depends on where you are. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I feel like every year, this time of year, we're talking about low clear water and how it makes fishing really tough. But it's not always the case. And I mean, we've had a fair number of boat side eats in the last week or two, even in really, really clear water and sunny days. So it's just about fishing your conditions and, putting the reps in and trying to do everything right when it counts.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll cool off at some point, right?
Yeah, we're getting there. I mean, we've got low to mid 60s depending on where you are, water temps in parts of the region, and that's thanks to lows in the 40s and 50s and highs close to 80 for the last couple of weeks. Lots of sun, not a lot of clouds. But that's changed. It's changed in the last couple of days, and it's fixing to change even more. I think tonight, it's been fairly breezy this week. It's pushing in some cooler weather. We're supposed to have lows in the around freezing or a little above, and highs in the 40s and 50s, and that's going to stick around at least for the extended forecast. So I kind of like that. I generally like things to be seasonal, and that'll align us fairly well. I usually look to have like mid 40s temps by the end of Thanksgiving, pretty typically. So hopefully that gets us on track there.
Yeah, and got an interesting question for you too. Got a bunch the last time, as I told you. I think when we start putting out musky pictures, people get excited and they respond better.
Yeah, well, good to know what the people want.
Yeah, well, it's a good top secret social media hack, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, question, and it was Ninja, and I can't remember the other part of his Instagram handle, but he wanted to get your thoughts on fly line and fly choice for fishing fall low water when you're in a smaller river system.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll start with the low water part. There's low water generally means one, not being. I know this is obvious, but it's going to be relatively shallow to sort of what is typical in the river system. It also generally means that the speed of the current is not very significant, which just means that the denser the line you're fishing, if you're fishing a 357 or a Tide 5 or something like that, you maybe get down too quickly. And it also, anytime you're musky fishing, especially if you're fishing sort of, Buford T-bone, glider kind of jackknifing flies, being able to not be rushed on your retrieve is invaluable. You don't want to be. It pays to fish flies fast sometimes, but if you've got a fly that does a lot of dog walking and side profile showing, it's nice to have a line that's matched well to the depth and speed of the current, so that if you want to pause it for 3 or 4 seconds, you can do that, not have to worry about it shoot to the bottom. So, I mean, I would be looking at basically anything with like and again, I don't know where you're fishing, but if I'm thinking shallow, small river, something with like a 3 inch per second or less sink rate. So that may be an intermediate. It may be like an I-35 SA triple density line. It may just be a sink tip, or you get a floating running line, because you're probably not making real long casts anyway. And to that end, the smaller the creek, generally, the more it pays to have a kind of a more compact head in your fly line, so you can sort of pull your fly out of the water and shoot a cast without having to worry about getting a big head out of your rod tip. So those are considerations. Cortland makes a pretty good intermediate line as well, musky line. But that I-35 or like a Type 3 sink tip from SA would probably be what I would recommend you start with. Again, not necessarily knowing where you're fishing. Another thing that might come into play that will impact your line choice is, the type of fly you're fishing, the type of presentation you're using. So if you're not fishing a standard, Buford or something that's designed to kick back and forth and walk the dog, maybe you're fishing something, you've got warm water in the 60s and you're trying to fish with speed, two-hand retrieving, stuff like that. It does pay in those situations to have a little bit more density in your line, because if you're going to be fishing real fast, shooting a fly to a log jam, be it into your first strip by the time it hits the water, burn it back to the boat. An intermediate might not be your best option, because you're going to want to get some bite in the water with that line, so that you're not just pulling it across the surface and it can get down 6 inches or a foot or two. So in that situation, I might look at a Type 5 or an I-35 or something like that that's got a little bit more sink rate. But that would be, I don't know if that's obvious. Those would be my suggestions. And then in terms of flies, I mean, I would always say to start with, regardless of size and color and all that stuff, look at what the food base is in your river system. It may be primarily hog suckers. It may be a lot of red horse, carp, sunfish, etc. Figure out what they're probably eating in there, and then use that to kind of narrow down your size and profile decisions. And let's see. Generally speaking, in lower clear water, I'm going to lean towards, natural colors. I always throw black in there. I like black just about all the time. Natural colors and going a little smaller. The clearer things are, you might consider going a little lighter on flash, but not necessarily. But smaller bugs are also a little easier to, depending on what materials are tied out of. If they're made out of deer hair, a smaller bug with enough density in your line will be pretty easy to cast, and it'll get down pretty easily. You might not be throwing your big 14-inch like glider style flies that are just packed to the brim with bucktail, because you're not making 70-foot casts and digging it down 8 feet and stripping it back to the boat. Those would be my suggestions. And I'm trying to figure out where else to go with that. Musky will eat a lot of things, even big flies and small water. Small flies and big water, those things aren't necessarily correlated. But, generally speaking, lower, clearer, slower water, I'd downsize a bit, go more natural. And yeah, I mean, that's where I would start anyway.
Yeah, well, there you go. And, folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. You can email me or DM me on social media, whatever is easiest for you. And if we use your question, I will send you some articulate fly swag, entering a drawing for some cool stuff from Matt at the end of the season. And, Matt, before I let you go, you want to let folks know, I know every time we talk, you have fewer and fewer days and they're deeper and deeper into the next season. You want to let folks know kind of what you have available and how to reach out and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah. We've got a couple of musky days left in like November, December, a few in January, few in February. But it's definitely get pretty thin, definitely more availability kind of later in the winter. Also, doing some smallmouth stuff on the tailwater in the kind of midst of winter, December, late November, December, January, February. It's a good time for that. But yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at in the immediate future. I have started booking some stuff for the spring, summer. But if you have any questions about anything, that I do throughout the year, whether that's the musky thing, winter smallmouth, spring striper stuff, smallmouth, through the seasons, whatever, just give me a shout and we'll figure out what the windows are and we'll get something set up. So feel free to reach out however you feel best, and all that info is on the website, which is MattReillyFlyFishing.com.
Yeah, and folks, as I always say, when it's dreary and miserable in February and you're not out fishing for muskie, you're gonna wish that you had gotten out, particularly since it's still unseasonably warm in the Mid-Atlantic. And I would also say too, most of East Tennessee, Southwest Virginia, and Western North Carolina is open for business, and a great thing to do. Take advantage of this weather, go to some of these mountain communities and spend some money and catch some fish. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Matt.
Hey, thanks, Marvin.